Quran says mountains prevent earthquakes, which is scientifically wrong. This verse says, we put mountains on earth, on land, lest it should shake with you. Now, when we say this, but modern geology tells us that earthquakes happen in mountains areas because it is where the plates collide. So naturally, earthquakes happen in mountains areas. Now, when we say this, Muslims love to give some answers. They think they have an answer to this. And the most popular one is this. Yes, mountains areas have earthquakes, but mountains have some reduce effects, some reduction effects on earthquakes. So that's what the verse talks about. Now, let's see why this is wrong. The first reason is simply because of the fact that, as always, Muslims only took the scientific part of the scientific fact that is usable to them, that is in their favor. So in actuality, yes, mountains have some reduction effects, but they also have amplification effects on earthquakes. And this amplification happens way more often, affects broader areas, and happen more significantly. What I mean by significantly is like when it happens, this amplification is the attitude, the rate of the amplification is greater than the rate of the deamplification. So it is seen more or more intense in every sense. On the other hand, the amplification effect of mountains, this is some redistribution of the energy, absorption of the energy happens. It is less significant. It happens way less often, and you need very specific conditions, like where is the mountain, where is the center of the earthquake, how much, what is the frequency, what is the ground material, which part of the mountain it hits, and where is the point that mountain sends less energy. Because even in the cases where we see a noticeable, not significant, but noticeable deamplification, it is still very local. So it is actually important that at which area mountain deamplified the earthquake, because probably the rest of the area around the mountain, it will still be amplifying the earthquake. So like this. So this is why this answer is bullshit, because it amplifies the earthquakes way more significantly. But more importantly, why do we choose this? Why do we understand that? This is more important because there is a bigger this pattern of Muslims use when it comes to these scientific errors in the Quran. We always see the same thing. Like, for example, consider this case. It says, we put mountains on earth lest it should shake with you. lest it should shake with you. So we put mountains so you wouldn't shake with the land. How does this mean a little reduction, a little de-amplification, a small stabilization? Who told you you could understand it like that? No one. The only thing is, this was the only thing you could find. So you automatically assume that that is what it means. You have no other proof that it doesn't talk about all the other things but this. You don't have that. And let's look at more of these other answers and we will see this pattern better. For example, another one says, they have pegs, they have roots, mountains have roots, and it slows down the crust on Earth, on magma. It works as these things, pegs, and they work as something stabilizes. Again, there's no such thing. I don't know where they hear these things, because I checked and I searched so much about this, and there's no such thing. I don't know where do they hear these things, but they keep saying this. Anyways, but again, let the fact that this claim is wrong aside. Who cares if this was true? Why would this be what the verse is talking about? It says, lest it should shake with you. You wouldn't shake with the land. Why do we understand this in, stabilization on the crust? Why? Again, another one. Their weight causes some gravitational stability. It works as stabilizer of gravity, some sort of like that. Again, there's no such thing. Complete bullshit. But again, what if it was true? You keep looking for something you judged on your own, because you need to expand the meaning, right? And so what we are doing here is we are expanding the meaning. We decided on our own that we can understand this stopping earthquakes, stopping the shaking, or protecting from shaking as some stability. Okay, we thought it is close enough. So we can take if some stabilization on earthquakes, some little reduction on earthquakes, we can take that. And then again, we kept going. Then we decided any kind of stabilization we can find throughout everything. We look at everything, and when we find something that mountains kind of stabilizes, that is what the Quran talks about. Okay, so this is the thing. It gets worse, and you will see this again. Another one is mountains stabilize the weather. Mountains stabilize the weather. Yeah, they really say this. So again, there is no such thing. And again, who cares if they would stabilize the earthquakes or mountains? Who cares if mountains stabilize the weather? How can this be what the verse is talking about? And you need to understand this. If you are going to look this much, check this much things, and only accept until you can find one thing that they kind of stabilize. What about all the other things? Who told you that you can just skip the other things? Who told you that? Yeah, so what you are doing is just when something doesn't fit your agenda, fit your narrative, just skip it. Something mountains don't stabilize or destabilize, they destabilize. We just casually skip it and look at to the next one. And you look at everything until the weather. Don't you think if we look this much at every point, like you did, at every point when we look at those things, we will find so many other things that mountains destabilize, like we did at the beginning. So why don't all those things count? Why should we look until we find one thing that mountains stabilize? What kind of research is that? So this is the common pattern. You always look at all the scientific data or anything, change the meaning, expand the meaning, misuse or misrepresent or nitpick scientific data, anything, until you find something that is relatively closer, and magically it didn't talk about all the other facts, but it talks about this verse talks about this very specific, almost completely disconnected, irrelevant fact. That is what the verse talks about. What about all the other things that mountains didn't stabilize? It was actually clear at the beginning, right? It is clear at the beginning. Earthquakes happen in mountains areas, and mountains generally amplify earthquakes. So at this point, it is completely over. It is completely over. Actually, we didn't even need the second one, the fact that mountains amplify earthquakes, because the problem, the argument that we are answering with this wasn't actually valid, right? So it was actually over at the beginning when it turns out that earthquakes happen in mountains areas. Actually, it was over, but they keep looking. When you just, until you find something that is relatively closer, you should just skip the other fact that is against you, that doesn't fit your narrative. You just skip it and look for the next one. This is the common pattern. I will do this thing for every scientific error in the Quran, and we will always see the same pattern.